So for those who aren't familiar with Tenshi Muyo, it is a very old anime, light novel, and manga that existed way back in 1992. It has been like 31 years since the show first aired. So like, I just saw the thumbnail to this video saying that they're actually working on a new series involving Tenchi. So like, there's no way I could like miss this. So yeah, let's check this trailer out here.
She may be the queen of the space pirates, but to some, she's the queen of the galaxy.
I can freaking hear Ryoko in this. That is wild. Tenchi Galaxy.
Hello there, Tenshi fans. It's Patria Burchard, the voice of Ryoko, with another exciting announcement. Thanks to the help of our amazing backers, Armature Entertainment is launching another Kickstarter campaign to create a brand new Tenshi Muyo anime. Tenshi Galaxy is the spiritual sequel to Tenshi Universe and follows the Tenshi gang.
Oh my god, the whole gang. It's been so long. Oh, I gotta see it.
As they travel to the space pirate homeworld in search of an artifact that was stolen from Jirai. In order to get it back, they must face Nimi, the space pirate queen.
Interesting design.
What dangers await them? What connection does Nimi have to Ryoko? And whose side is Nagi on? Hiroshi Nagishi, the director of Tenshi Universe, is returning to helm this special project.
根岸博です。セーバープロジェクトと 0G の方の代表をやっています。で、今回の作品のことに関しては一応監督をやれと言われてますので、まあそういうポジションでやろうかなと思ってますけど。いやー、正直懐かしいですよね。まあ日本。
But yeah, if you're gonna bring a series back, it makes sense to bring like the original creators back, because like. I think we kind of saw firsthand what happens when you take original creators from their work and try to make it to their, you know, a different image. Yeah, it doesn't really work out. So I'm really glad they got him back.
テレビ天地無用、ネギシ版天地って言われてるんですが、多分海外だと天地ユニバースっていうタイトルでリリースされてると思うんですが、まあそこで出てきたキャラクターとして、ナイトとか要するにキヨネっていうのが、オリジナルキャラクターとして出てるんですけど、非常に自分として見ても思い入れが強くて、まあキャラクターたちにもう一回触れられるっていうことに対することに関しては非常に自分として見ても。
It felt like a century.
Reward tiers for the campaign include a digital download, a physical Blu-ray, a unique steelbook design just for this Kickstarter campaign, and even more for the most dedicated fans. There are also more add-ons than you'll know what to do with. Sticker sheets, posters, patches, an art book, a vinyl record, and even a VHS version for a proper 90s Tenshi Muyo throwback. All your favorite familiar voices
Those of us
are
in the
returning,
90s, you know.
Project
Washu, Sasami, Mihoshi, Nagi. What's her name? Wait, why didn't they add her name? Ryoki. Am I blind? Oh, I guess they couldn't fit her name in there.
Also features two newcomers to the franchise, including Christina Veen as Ayaka and HoloLive Advent's devilish diva.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know a HoloLive talent was going to be in this. I definitely got to see it.
And virtual idol Narissa Ravencroft as Risa, the space pirate. Here to say a few words about the project is the president of AIC, Toru Miura.
AIC のミュラです。今回このプロジェクトについてはプロデューサーをやらせていただいております。基本的に鹿島君の作った世界をこういう形で、皆さんの前で紹介できるというのは非常に、嬉しく思っております。この作品はいわば、日本のアニメーションの第2ステージ、第3ステージあたりになるでしょうか。非常にOVA という形でオリジナル作品ということで世の中に出て、非常に日本では大きな反響を呼びました。 ただやはり、日本のアニメーションが世界中にどんどん浸透していくということの中で、次のステップとしてはやはり海外のクリエイターと共に、
But now that I think about it, I have to find a VHS
天地無用の世界をさら
tape
に
player.
広げていくというのは、非常に作品にとっても幸せなことだと思いますので、この、作品といいますか、この、タームに限らず次の大きな展開を、望んでおりますので、今後とも応援をよろしくお願いいたします。
If this campaign is successful enough, Armature Entertainment will work with Mura and Nagishi to develop a full-fledged anime series.
Oh,
The
wow.
carnival has returned. But how long is it going to last? That's up to you. Thank
Okay.
you for all your tremendous support. Until next time.
That is so cool. But yeah, guys, let's get this thing to succeed. But yeah, but I wanted to show you that video first. And again, like for those who are not really familiar with Tenshi Muyo or didn't really grow up with the show, I found two videos that were like related to the one we just watched. I feel like they would help give a good introduction to what Tenshi Muyo is. So yeah, let's check the first one out. Yeah, what the heck was Tenshi Muyo? So let's watch this. Yep, the Toonami ad. For those who know, you know. And yeah, we grew up with like an older Toonami.
The luck and 6 ladies still after his heart.
Does this woman have that I don't? Can you tell me? Huh?
Love is a battlefield.
Everybody knows that in the late 90s into the early 2000s, the biggest gateway into anime for most American audiences was Toonami. It was that special era in time where anime wasn't always readily available. It wasn't on multiple streaming services because they didn't exist yet. But it was something that you had to seek out, or at the very least, make time for and be sure that you were sitting in front of your TV from 4 to 7 p.m. on Cartoon Network so that you could be taken away into various fantasy worlds that included Sailor Scouts, Dragon Balls, Galactic Ley Lines, and plenty more. But in the year 2000, there premiered one of the strangest, most bizarre fever dreams of an anime show to ever air on a television channel here in the West that was geared towards children. And that was Tenshi Muyo.
Now, I want your balls, please.
What? A series that is this insane blend of science fiction, over-the-top comedy.
Now, I remember back then, like, there was like a whole weird web map. Like all the characters were somehow related, yet not related. And even back then, I could not figure out that whole web theory thing between the characters. I just gave up.
The wholesome inspiration, intense action sequences, a rabbit-cat hybrid called Ryowoki that turns into a spaceship.
Yeah.
That's a thing. There was also demon women, alien women, mad scientist women, and space police women that were all conveniently gathered into one location where all of them basically wanted to bang this guy. Tenshi Masaki, the most unassuming, polite, and awkward protagonist of all time. There's evil villains in this show, there's all-powerful godlike entities, there's sacred trees, there's basically lightsabers, and there's an episode dedicated to seeing all of the characters sharing bath time together. To be a kid going from watching something like Dragon Ball Z to just a half an hour to an hour later, seeing it back-to-back with this mind-altering experience of Tenshi Muyo, especially during those adolescent years, and getting to spend so much time with some really frisky space babes. Honestly, I think this show broke my brain for a little bit, and if I didn't experience it firsthand, I probably would never imagine a show like this could exist. And by show, I mean shows in the multiple. Yeah. But I'll get into that in a minute. Unlike many
Yeah,
other
different
Toonami shows at the
series.
time that had solidly stood the test of time and are still talked about to this day, Tenchi seems to have this unique legacy where it's mostly faded into obscurity, with the very distinct exception that there are some people who were really, and I mean really, really into it at the time. I was one of them. And to us, this show will never die. And more particularly, the experience of watching it when it was on TV during our formative years led to it being a very distinct core memory that we can never get rid of.
Yeah,
Picture getting home from school and
pretty
turning on
much.
Toonami around 4 or 5 p.m. You're blasted with the adrenaline of Dragon Ball Z, the
Yep.
political
After
turmoil
school,
of
every
Gundam
day.
Wing, the themes of remorse and redemption of Rurouni Kenshin, and then Tenchi Muyo.
I was a big Rurouni Kenshin fan, especially, Kenshin Himura. Yeah.
Muyo begins, where an unassuming, incredibly polite teenage boy awakens an ancient demon who turns out to be this hot chick named Ryoko, who can fly, teleport, shoot energy beams, and also totally wants to nail him. Then in the next episode, you're introduced to Princess Ayeka, a girl from outer space who in the series is also related to Tenchi himself because, surprise, he's connected to the same royal bloodline of Jirai, and also she still wants to nail him. Yeah, and it just gets continuously weirder from there.
Yeah.
Before long, Tenchi has a bunch of various women that end up living in his house with him, and they get up to different adventures. There are science experiments gone wrong. There's the occasional visits from other entities from outer space, the occasional supervillain, plenty of slice of life episodes, and really going into an episode of Tenshi Muyo, you never quite knew what you were going to get. Maybe you'd get introduced to a new character. Maybe there would be some kind of unstoppable threat that the characters have to fight. Or maybe it's just the characters going to a carnival. Maybe it's one where Washu is trying to get Tenchi to get her pregnant. Or maybe there's a robot taking on the form of one of our main characters. Or maybe the whole episode takes place in a bathhouse. The point is, you never knew what you were going to get. And the guy that was dead center in the midst of all this was Tenchi Masaki, and he is not a superhero by any stretch of the imagination. He basically rejects all the advances from the girls around him and is genuinely a good-natured dude, which is kind of why it's hilarious that his character is surrounded with so much chaos. He's not out for himself, he's incredibly respectful, and he mostly just wants some peace and quiet. He trains and he can fight, but he doesn't seek any kind of ultimate power. He's just the unassuming protagonist that is reactionary to the wild situations around him, but rarely does he actually lead the narrative. He's kind of always caught in the crossfire, always figuring out what to do when the situations get out of hand, and he's always doing his best to help everybody involved within that process and also making them feel welcomed even though they are all invasive into his home. Tenchi is the heart and center of the show because he really is genuinely trying to do what is best for everybody around him. But trying to talk about what the show was about is kind of a futile effort. It constantly just throws more and more different shit at you from time and time again.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to go on the ride. It also depends on which Tenchi series you're watching. So Tenchi as a franchise has multiple...
Yeah, I think Tenchi in Tokyo kind of like, had more of an impact on me because I can relate more to the whole school thing. Everything else was like random episode plot, you figure it out.
Shows with different continuities, and none of them are the same. As of today, we have the OVA series with multiple seasons. We have at least 5 different TV shows with the title...
Oh, I definitely remember this one. This was the last Tenchi thing that I watched. I don't remember any of their names, but I do remember this the most.
Tenshi Muyo. We have at least 3 Tenshi Muyo movies, and we have a handful of TV specials and spin-off series.
Wait,
but I want to make this video from the
I don't remember that
perspective
part.
of what it was like to discover the show in the early 2000s, so I'm going to dial it back a bit. Back in the day, there were 3 Tenchi shows that aired on Toonami. Each of them have a completely different continuity and lore, and they all aired back to back. So if you watched a little bit of Tenshi Muyo and then you missed some episodes, You could tune back in a week later, and the context and backstory of all of the characters and situations would be totally different because now you'd be watching Tenchi Universe, which made things pretty confusing for kids back in the day. The OVA series was called Tenshi Muyo, but the full title would be Tenshi Muyo Ryooki. OVA meaning original video animation, so it wasn't intended as a series to air on television in Japan. But in the US and other places, it did. This was our first exposure to any form of Tenchi. The full OVA series currently now has 5 seasons, with each season being about 6 to 7 episodes apiece. But at the time, there was only 2 seasons at about 13 episodes total. So Toonami aired those. And after the final Tenchi Muyo episode they had at that time, they immediately began airing Tenchi Universe. Now, Tenchi Universe is intended as a series to air on television, and it consists of 26 episodes total and is within its own continuity, not connected to the OVA. In Tenchi Universe, Ryoko is not a demon, but instead a powerful space pirate that still wants to bang Tenchi. In Tenchi Universe, Ayeka is still a princess of Jirai, but thankfully is no longer related to Tenchi, so her wanting to bang him doesn't feel quite as weird. And they also add in another girl who was not in the OVA series with that of Kione. She is the much more competent Galaxy police officer partner of Mihoshi, who was meant to be the silly, ditzy girl of the group. And about half of Tenchi Universe is very similar to Tenchi Muyo, as it takes place with Tenchi dealing with all of these girls hanging out at his house, but about halfway through the series, it really begins to pick up. Ayeka and the others are accused of treason, and alongside everybody else, they're forced into outer space. They become fugitives that are being tracked by the Galaxy Police and the planet Jirai, where Ayeka is from. And there are a ton of fun episodes within this segment of them trying to get to the bottom of this mystery, navigating themselves out of dangerous situations, having to infiltrate the Galaxy Police dressed as schoolgirls, which is really funny, learning the history and importance of Tenchi's grandfather, who is a majorly important character in any version of the lore, even though he's not the main character of the series, and it leads to an ultimate epic battle with the villain character Kagato. There's also a bounty hunter named Nagi who is on their tail, and she is super cool and also has her own animal that turns into a spaceship. And within all of that, you also get a swimsuit episode. So there you go. Then as soon as Tenchi Universe ends, we get Tenchi in Tokyo. This is another 26 episode made for TV series with completely different lore than the other 2 series. Here in the first episode, all the girls already live with Tenchi, so we don't get to see how they met each other until a backstory episode later on. And the premise is that Tenchi moves away from all of them to the busy city of Tokyo, where he begins to fall for a new girl in his class named Sakuya. Obviously, this makes the other girls very jealous and upset that they're so far away from Tenchi as he's falling for somebody else, but it also leads itself to a much darker plotline of an antagonist hoping to separate the group, making them weaker before they have to come back together to face the true threat in the end. In Tenchi in Tokyo, Tenchi is not related to the planet Jirai at all, and all of the powers and weapons that he utilizes are completely different than anything that we've seen before. This series also tends to focus heavily on the comedy aspect more than anything else. Even though all 3 shows are very funny, I think Tenchi in Tokyo goes the farthest with it, and perhaps even a little bit overboard at time, in my opinion. But I still enjoy it. Now, later on, there were even more Tenchi series added to the mix. There was Tenchi Muyo GXP, War on Geminar, and I Tenchi Muyo, which came out in 2014 and is the most recent newer series. But I'm not as familiar with these versions, I will admit. So again, I'm focusing on the original 3 series that aired in the early 2000s. The thing about the Tenchi series airing when it did is that when you get down to it, it really did not fit in, especially because of its genre. Toonami mostly aired action and shonen shows, but Tenchi is technically classified as a harem anime, which is basically a genre that's defined by having a single protagonist, usually male, surrounded by multiple romantic or sexual prospects.
Tenchi would fit more into like Adult Swim rather than Toonami.
And that tends to be its core focus. usually resulting in the shows ending up being very comedy focused or very fan service focused. And although Tenchi isn't technically the only harem anime to air on US television, it was the first, and I still believe the most popular. And you have to remember, this was at a time where anime itself was not looked at in the fondest of lights, and I stress, this was on children's television. But to be fair, although Tenchi does have its fair share of nudity in its uncensored format, I would argue that it's actually not as heavy on the fan service as you would think, especially by today's standards. Honestly, I can't even watch a lot of newer anime of this type because it becomes so exaggeratory and explicit with its characters, and it starts to border on full-on hentai, and no offense to anybody out there, but that's just not really my thing. I do have a limit when it comes to fan service stuff. Tenchi was surrounded by hot girls, sure, but it had a really engaging story that focused heavily on its science fiction and fantasy elements, and each girl in the cast was a fully fleshed out and realized character that had their own quirks, goals, and character arcs. They weren't just there for sex appeal or to be fan service.
Yeah.
Ryoko was really the only girl that was overt in her sexuality because that was just part of her personality. She was super outgoing. She was a criminal. She didn't care. Depending on the lore, she was either a demon or not, so it made sense for her. Ayeka was much more reserved and shy. Washu, although she did some weird stuff on occasion, but she usually wasn't sexualized at all. Mihoshi and Kiyone were usually depicted doing their jobs as the police, and Sasami was a child, and she got to be just a wholesome kid. And other characters introduced like Nagi were just badass. So what I'm saying is, despite the term harem anime being placed on Tenchi, Tenchi was a rather wholesome show with slight pervy moments, rather than the focus being on all the weird pervy fan service stuff. It also gives you plenty of action, plenty of comedy from every single character, and with a protagonist like Tenchi who is supposed to be just a good, wholesome dude, you may even get some great lessons along the way that you weren't expecting. But even though Tenchi is not explicit by today's standards, airing on TV in the early 2000s definitely required it to have a bunch of censorship in order to be able to be shown, famously painting bathing suits on the girls in the bath episode. But still, it was pretty obvious to anybody watching that there was a not-so-subtle attempt at covering up what's really going on here.
Well, yeah, you're airing
But
the
instead of
kids.
just skipping the episode entirely, they still aired it on TV. So imagine being an 11-year-old kid watching this episode on TV, and then your mom walks in. Like, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
Even with the terrible attempt to censor it with these fake-looking bathing suits, how do you explain this? At times, it felt like something you had to sneak watching, but then the very next episode would be this action-heavy epic with Tenchi confronting Kagato, introducing intergalactic turmoil and special powers. And why couldn't that have been the episode that my parents walked in on instead, huh? Just luck of the draw, I guess. The other interesting thing is that they actually made home video releases of the censored versions of Tenshi Muyo. I still have these clamshell VHS copies of the first Tenshi Muyo series that aired on Toonami, all 12 episodes on 4 VHS tape. Look at that. They didn't even get the color of his sword right. Why is it yellow? It's supposed to be blue. It's always blue. Also, I love how on the back it says ages 7 and up. Yeah, sure. A 7-year-old should be watching Tenshi Muyo. I don't think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was around 10 or 11 when I discovered it, and even then it felt...
Yeah, I think the people who rated this, they didn't even bother to... They don't know nothing about the show. They just see the pictures and think, oh yeah, this is made for kids.
A little bit too much for me. Didn't stop me from collecting the VHS, though. Over the years, acquiring any Tenchi anime on physical media has become exceedingly more difficult. Luckily, I do have both Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo on DVD. A lot of these DVDs I've literally had since the early 2000s. The Tenchi Universe collection is different than the one that you can pick up now if you were to order it off of Amazon. And the Tenchi movies, you can probably just tell from the wear and tear and the discoloration that this has been in my possession since probably the year 2001 or 2. And unfortunately, I have the first and third Tenchi movie, but I do not have the second. I also like how on the back of the Tenchi in Tokyo DVD, it gives you a little bit of a guide of the Tenchi universe and which ones are connected. It's pretty helpful. But that original OVA series, Tenshi Muyo or Tenshi Muyo Ryooki, that has been out of print in the US for years. And
Wow.
every so often I try to search for it. I look at used movie stores, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or wherever I can, and so far I've been unsuccessful. Sometimes I do happen to find one of them up for hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, and I just can't
Tenshi
dish out
Muyo
that much
OVA.
money, even though I've desperately been wanting to add this to the collection for years. But hey, at least if I ever get a working VCR, I can watch the edited VHS versions. But when I look at these tapes or rewatch some of the old Toonami promos, I can't help but be taken back to that time and remember falling in love with these characters. I remember trying to convince my friends to watch it, but a lot of them just couldn't get into it because they preferred to stay with the fully action-based anime shows like Dragon Ball Z. But there was something about Tenchi that I personally just could not stay away from. And it wasn't just the girls, I swear. Oh, by the way, quick tangent. Even though plenty of the girls flirt with Tenchi, it's really only between Ryoko and Ayeka as the two that
Okay, I just found it on Amazon, and yeah, you can find it for like under $200. But hopefully you can find a cheaper version if you guys search for Tenshi Muyo Ryooki.
Truly compete for his affections. And despite for 26 years now, everybody always telling me that they prefer Ryoko and like her the best, I still, to this day, stand firm that I am a Ayeka shipper through and through, and I will never be convinced otherwise. Specifically in Tenchi Universe when they're, not related to each other.
Oh, there we go.
But I digress. No, what I mean is that Tenchi kind of had this comforting atmosphere to it. The setting in Tenchi's home, in the woods, the shrine, the farming, the bunch of characters that are just hanging out, being silly and causing a ruckus. It kind of became a comfort show, a show where you went just to hang out with the characters. And even when the more dramatic space adventures do begin, it was all of their clashing unique personalities along with the ever-expanding mythology that always kept my interest at an all-time high. The show was never boring. There was always something crazy going on. I realize now, too, that I do tend to gravitate towards that found family trope, misfit characters that don't really fit in where they are traditionally supposed to be from, but find some kind of worthiness in unlikely pairings or unlikely groups. And even when the characters literally fought with each other in a violent fashion, you knew that at some point, if it ever came down to it, they would still be willing to die for one another. And there is something about that found family vibe that I just really resonate with. Maybe that's why all the different lore and canon of the various series all work simultaneously, because each show, in a way, is about belonging. It's about lost, displaced characters that have no logical reason to hang out with Tenchi, but they all somehow fit perfectly here, drawn to his upstanding and good-natured personality. There's a structure within its chaotic and messy exterior that just works. It wasn't just an action-fighting anime, and that's what made it stand out at the time, especially airing on the era of television that it did, with Toonami that gave you so much of the same. And in that, Tenchi felt so different, like really different. A hilarious, heartfelt, and at times super frisky kind of different. But with all that said, I don't know how this generation or even an older one that missed out would respond to Tenchi for the first time in this modern era. Anime is everywhere now. It is super accessible and incredibly mainstream. There's shows that can give you way better action, better sci-fi.
Yeah, I think if you look up Tenshi Muyo in any of their series, you could definitely find it in any anime streaming platform. So yeah, you should be able to find that anywhere.
And modern harem anime is anything but subtle to the point where it's laughable that Tenchi felt extreme at the time. Added to that, there's multiple series with different continuities and just even being able to find it. Right now, it's streaming virtually nowhere, and your best bet at this point is looking for full episodes that are still up on YouTube. With Crunchyroll only having season 4 and 5 of the OVA and some of the newer series, but Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo are nowhere to be found. Same thing with the earlier seasons of the OVA. The physical media for it is scarce, and with hundreds of other anime out there to watch, Tenchi feels like it's kind of been left behind. But for those that remember it, for those that were there, for those that watched it while it was airing or got into it at that time,
that's me.
It still does hold a very special place in our hearts as being a show or shows that were unlike anything else that was airing at the time and expanded our interest and imaginations of where anime could go and what it could be. If you were to try to track these shows down, I would recommend Tenshi Universe the most as the one to watch. I think it's the best story-wise. It has 26 episodes total, and it's a good blend of comedy, action, and sci-fi. If you like that, I would follow it up with the first Tenshi movie called Tenshi Muyo in Love. This movie is shockingly great, and I say that as somebody who already likes the show, that the movie surprised me with how good it was. A lot of anime movies from that time are just these random throwaway plots that don't really matter to the overall narrative, but the first Tenshi movie is extremely creative, intense. It deals with an aspect the show never got into, as the gang travels back in time to save a younger version of Tenshi's mom from a villain called Kane, who is ridiculously powerful and awesome and way cooler than you would imagine a Tenshi villain ever could be. The movie also has a lot of heart to it and relates to how Tenshi's mother and father got together, and that's a huge aspect of it. There's plenty of humor that's consistent with the show, and the final battle with Kane is actually one of the more intense fights in any version of Tenshi. I highly recommend it. The other two Tenshi movies aren't as good, but they're worth checking out if you're invested in the characters. Supposedly, the first and third Tenshi movie are connected with the Tenshi universe continuity, but to my knowledge, the second Tenshi movie is not connected to any of the other anime and instead is based on a light novel. So why put 2 in the title? Why make it seem like a sequel to nothing? I mean, I guess that's just part of the continuity issues with Tenshi to begin with. It's a nightmare. I honestly think it doesn't really matter. The movies are pretty much standalone stories anyway. So I would go Tenshi Universe, then the first Tenshi movie, then after that, expand your horizons how you want to, whether it's the Tenshi OVAs, if you want to watch the other movies, or if you want to delve into Tenshi in Tokyo or anything else.
Yeah, Tenshi.
And I would recommend Tenshi in Tokyo if you lean more into the comedy side of things, as I think it has the most humor out of all the shows, although it does have its darker and more serious moments as well. As for the other series, I'm not as familiar with them, but maybe someday I'll catch up.
I didn't catch this at all. When did this come out? I didn't see this either. I only saw this. Okay. I guess these came out like after this, but yeah, I did not. No. I kind of completely missed these.
Mostly, I look at Tenshi from a place of nostalgia. Unlike some other shows of my youth, it's not one that I revisit as often. But I still do think about it from time and time again. I remember the comfort that hanging out with those characters gave me. I remember some of the silliness. I remember the adventures. I remember the space epic. I remember the sword fights. I remember Ayeka and Ryoko fighting over Tenshi.
Yep.
And I remember Tenshi just doing his best to be the best possible person he can. I remember the music very well. And a lot of the show always seemed to take place during the fall, and it had a really good aesthetic with Tenshi living out in the woods and seeing the changing colors of the leaves. I think the creator likes the fall. But when I do decide to go back and rewatch Tenshi, it is always a treat, and it takes me back to a simpler time. A time of discovery in my adolescence and thinking what it would be like if I had an energy sword or was surrounded by a bunch of space babes. A time where anime still felt fresh and new, and you never quite knew what you were going to get. Also, in my adult age, I still do wonder what it would be like to be surrounded by a bunch of space babes, but that's a story for another time. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this video. Let me know if you are a fan of any of the Tenshi series, if you grew up on it on Toonami, or if you got into it later, or if you're hearing about it for the first time. Tell me what you think. As always, guys, I appreciate your support in watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and a comment to help it out in the algorithm. And if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships linked down below. Even $1 a month goes a long way. It would really help me out. YouTube can be
But yeah, I got you, bro. But yeah, that's basically Tenshi Muyo. Now, some of those tidbits I did not even know about, but I'm glad I watched this. I mean, watch those parts. Okay, let's just watch one more. I feel like there might be more info on Tenshi that I might have missed, but honestly, let's see.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and it's time to talk about a manga anime series that if
I
you
love this
were reading in the
original
90s,
art.
if you were paying attention to manga and anime back then, you know this series extremely well. If
Just the art is so crisp with all the cells and stuff. It's just so charming seeing this.
you missed that, if you started in the 2000s, you probably have no idea what this is, but you may see a lot of kind of legacy material and kind of wondered, what is this series? We're talking about Tenshi Muyo,
I
which
remember this
is
dude.
in North America was just called Tenshi Muyo. In Japan, it was Tenshi Muyo Ryoki, and it's had a number of different names in other places, which kind of that is the story of this series. This came out in 1992, and it was it started as a collection of basically OVAs, and the creator Masaki Kajishima. Now, what happened was that this, I'd say, was the first series to do something that we're seeing a lot more regularly now with shows like Demon Slayer and kind of how some and even My Hero Academia has taken a page from this. They went for a big franchise right out the gate. They had a partner in Pioneer Entertainment that was desperately trying to crack overall kind of anime distribution. And there was this idea in the 90s that, hey, look at the boom of comic movies and comic attention. People are paying it. We had the death of Superman, and we had all these big events that are getting news. There's all this manga over in Japan that seems ready-made to bring over to the U.S. So if we bill it and merchandise it as something new and unique, then it will do great. Does that sound familiar? Because it is very much what's going on now, albeit in a much more amateur way back in the 90s. The challenge that Tenshi Muyo had, and not getting into kind of what happened to it, which is a little bit the point of this video, is that in the 90s, your distribution method was going to be VHS tapes. And if you go into like a Half Price Books or a place like that, chances are, if that place still has VHS tapes, and some of them do, you'll find big collections of Tenshi Muyo and the OVAs there. And it's because back during kind of the 90s, everybody bought this. If you were interested in kind of comics and kind of dipping your toe into manga,
back then when anime was like very rare, like we just had to get what we can get.
Many people went this direction. So what is Tenshi Muyo? What was this series? Well, in a nutshell, it's centered around Tenshi Masaki. And he was the grandson of a Shinto priest who's going to teach him swordplay. But he's like many characters that are in manga. He's somewhat hapless. He doesn't really understand what he's doing and distracted. It's not full on the disappointment trope, but he's trying to learn, but he's clearly just not
Is
not
he really
there.
distracted?
So he basically for reasons unknown, he steals keys to a sealed cave on the shrine grounds that legends say holds a sleeping demon. In doing so, he releases Ryoko. Ryoko is turns out to be a very attractive, crazy, angry space pirate, but kind of the classic, not a villain character, but
I think in the original they made her into a demon, but then in the later series they just decided to make her into a space pirate, which okay.
But wanted, willing to take short shots, loud, boisterous. In Japan culture, kind of this is the nightmare woman who's going to embarrass you to your family, that kind of thing. Ryoko has been laying in suspended animation for 7 centuries. Because she is awakened, this basically brings ultimately a more women.
I take it this is supposed to be Kione, and I have no freaking clue what this is.
From space to Earth to ultimately move in with Tenshi. And so the plot of this series is really along the lines of Tenshi has some mysterious powers. Turns out he's part alien as well. Spoilers, I guess. And he's learning and trying to come into his own. So it's this I don't want to say coming of age story, but he's learning how to grow and kind of evolving his powers. Meanwhile, he's juggling a half dozen women who have set up shop as a harem. basically, and you've got kind of the nice innocent one that is the but by the book, that is the counterbalance to Ryoko the pirate. You've got the lovable kind of giddy daughter character. It seems way too young for this situation. You've got the older scientist lady. You have a police that show up, and kind of the ditzy bubbly partner. Anyway, it's basically kind of the six.
I think Washi was supposed to be like hundreds of years old or something.
Female characters in anime that show up, or in manga that show up at his house, move in, and they're all kind of vying for his attention. It's the classic unwanted harem plot. And this ultimately leads to him going off into space, and a little bunny that could transform into a ship, and just a lot of elements that, to people in the U.S. who'd never seen manga before, never had interaction.
I realized, why is he in a shirt in the water?
It was new,
But
different,
again,
exciting. The animation
okay.
was pretty solid. Again, it was much stronger, more detailed than what people normally see. But it also, I mean, it wasn't the most complex plot. It basically revolved around this kind of hapless kid running away from women at various times as they would try and seduce him, sort of. In many cases, the seduction was happening because the big conflict was Ryoko and was this Sasami? No, Sasami was the younger sister. Aika was the one those two are constantly bickering, and because they're bickering, they determine that the right way to bicker is to vie for Tenshi's attention, and so they do that. But anyway, that's where all this goes. And then there's space adventures, and there's people who are coming to attack Tenshi, and there's villains, and say you need to defend him, and so all of this stuff is kind of the same basic plot over and over. But it was new, it was different, and was marketed really heavily in the US as something you could jump into. It also did a good job of presenting itself as buy this first DVD or this first VHS and get the first OVA. You get semi-complete story. Things are still ending in a cliffhanger, but it wasn't this convoluted mess of having to go try and figure out where everything goes. The episodes released, there are 6 of them that started in 1992, I have no idea who this is. And then went to 93. And then they released a holiday edition special, as they do with a lot of this stuff, kind of at the end of 93. And then they made another 6 episodes in 94 through 95. The trap for this series. So why has it been forgotten? If it did kickstart, and it really, it's funny because people who are not around in the 90s look at this and it's like, I've never heard of this before. But if you were in the 90s, you absolutely knew this existed because you couldn't avoid it. It was massive. Well, one, it ran into a bit of the comic bubble burst. One of the places where this was really popular, certainly in comic shops, but also in places like record stores, and now I've forgotten even the names of these. You remember places like Walden Books and Barnes and Noble, not Barnes
Borders.
and Noble, Walden Books, and what was the other one?
Borders.
Not Barnes and Noble, not Borders. Anyway, the other one.
The other one.
That sucks. I'm failing in my 90s mall memory here. Places like, we had Spinner Rack up here that was had nothing to do with comics.
I don't remember this.
You had Silver Platters, you had Tower Records, those kinds of places. I mean, Tower Records was huge all over this, largely because Pioneer Entertainment was making a huge push to get this stuff going. Now, of course, you can find this stuff on Funimation. I think Crunchyroll has it as well. But basically the big kind of collapse of not just comic shops, but places like that, Tower Records and other mall type shops that vanished over the next 10 years certainly didn't help. The second OVA series ended in a cliffhanger, and then 8 years went by before they got to the third series, which was also a mess. And then it kind of it caused its own problems. So one of the things that it did very successfully was easy entry. You could step into the series. It is not that hard to figure out what was going on, and it basically was easy to know where to begin. Then they started doing lots and lots of spin-offs, and the spin-offs were at times tonally completely different from the original series. There were some that were completely silly, no attempt at anything but kind of silly, the humor. Then they did a movie that was like hardcore serious that didn't fit the tone at all. But it was kind of all those things. But as a series, especially that first 6 episodes, it's amazing how many kind of anime tropes you get crammed into one series. You get the the classic hapless male protagonist. You get the kind of the horny grandpa that is excited by these women hanging around. You get the the various weird flirting. You get the A-cup angst, as they call it, of a character complaining that she's not busty enough to compete. You get weird creatures that could transform into ships, all that kind of stuff. Tenshi Muyo was fun. It was an absolutely a fun series, and it did it was a good sci-fi lightweight space adventure. It's been certainly criticized for being overly sexist. I mean, where this thing winds up, certainly in I think the 5th series is Tenshi is actually, at this point fathered children with Ryoko and Aika and Ryo-Oki. And so
Ryo-Oki, did he have kids with the rabbit?
So, I mean, he fully leans into the harem bit, and it goes from he's kind of nervous to be around all these women to he's impregnating them. So I mean, it definitely, you get it doesn't hide any of that, but it is it's a good silly series. If you've never seen it, it's certainly worth a look. If for no other reason that it is such a time capsule of it is a what time capsule 90s anime is like. It is one of those ones where I saw it come up recently, and for whatever reason it's getting kind of a second life, possibly because Crunchyroll promoted it, or Funimation did, or somebody. And it's amazing now, people are coming out of the woodwork to want to put trigger warnings on all this stuff about this series is it's if you think fan service in something like One Piece is bad, this is far beyond any of that. But it's again, your mileage may vary. I think it's just funny. It's a fun series.
This was before the whole trigger warning thing became an actual thing.
It's definitely not triggering. I mean, if you're gonna be triggered by this, then you got other problems, bluntly. I mean, it nowhere gets anywhere close to serious enough to provide real horrors for people. It's a goofy series, but it is an amazing 90s time capsule. Check it out. It's a fun little thing, and yeah, it's weird. It's weird as a series to have it so well known in one decade and completely forgotten in another. It also perhaps provides a bit of a warning for what could happen. We're seeing this big manga anime boom right now, but Tenshi Muyo was a good example of where it fell apart, of a series that made all the unfortunate mistakes, some by timing and some by things it did itself, being easily accessible, and then suddenly becoming very convoluted is a mistake. And it feels a little bit like Demon Slayer's on the track to make the same mistake at the moment, but we'll see. Anyway, do you remember Tenshi Muyo? Do you have fond memories of it? You hate it? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe.
Yeah,
and thanks for listening. This will walk down memory lane.
That's cool. Okay, but yeah, I just wanted to show you guys what Tenshi Muyo was, for those who never watched the show and just wanted to get an introduction to it. Okay, I'm gonna put all 3 video links in the description. And for the first video, please go support their Kickstarter, and let's get this new series of Tenshi Muyo to come into fruition. We need to make it happen. It's been over 30 years. I can't wait to see new Tenshi, and I think a lot of us back in us 90s kids, can't wait to see new Tenshi as well.